Back in the mid-90s, it seemed like almost every day you'd see a new console add-on in a magazine. Sometimes it was tough to understand the point. Was it really essential? Did it give a power boost to gaming that was actually worth it? Or was it just a company desperately trying to keep a sinking ship afloat? This is the story of the Atari Jaguar CD. Join me as we crack open this bizarre piece of hardware and see what it was actually built to do. And to do this, we'll break it all down into two parts. The first about the hardware itself, and second, to take a closer look at the Jaguar CD-based games. So let's talk about what this thing was physically, because here's what most people get wrong. The Jaguar CD wasn't some secret turbocharger for the console. It plugged right into the cartridge slot on top of your Jaguar, and it had its own slot on top for your games. That's it. Inside, the only new piece of silicon was something called the Butch chip. And get this, all Butch did was handle the CD drive interface and some software for decompressing video and graphics. It didn't actually add a new processor, didn't boost the graphics power, nothing. But here's where it gets interesting. This add-on was actually part of the plan from day one. Atari was showing it off to the press almost as soon as the Jaguar itself was revealed. But they waited, and waited. It finally stumbled out the door in late 1995, right as the PlayStation and Saturn were taking over. And by this time, the Jaguar was already on life support. But here's a wild detail that explains its legend. Atari only ever made about 25,000 of these units. Some say they ordered more, but no one's ever found proof they were actually built. That's why today, you're looking at between $500 to $1,000 or more for one. It's one of the rarest commercial add-ons ever. Collector's item much? So, we've got a 64-bit-ish console, a last-minute add-on that adds almost no additional power, and a tiny production run. But hold on, because the CD format itself has one killer trick up its sleeve. Let me show you what I mean. The Jaguar CD could store up to 790 megabytes on a disk. That was more than any other CD-based system at the time. Bigger than the Sega CD. Bigger than the early PlayStation games. It used a proprietary format to cram more data on there. But here's the new problem that created. Those special disks were a nightmare to produce, and it makes playing games today a real headache. If you want to burn a homebrew game onto a CDR, you have to do it at a snail's pace with super high quality disks. Otherwise, it just won't read. It's a fussy, fragile system. Alright, now we know what it doesn't add and why it's so rare. But there is one feature built into every single unit that is genuinely, legitimately cool, and it has nothing to do with games. Pop in a music CD, and the Jaguar CD boots into something called the VLM, the Virtual Light Machine. This was created by Jeff Minter, the legend behind Tempest 2000. It's a psychedelic light show that reacts to your music in real time. We're talking waves, patterns, colors, all generated based on the audio waveform. This felt way ahead of its time, and if you ask me, it's pretty freaking cool. I've even heard stories of DJs using this thing in nightclubs back in the day, hooked up to a projector. How awesome is that? In an era before media players, this was a legit piece of interactive art built into a game console. Now, about the toilet bowl look. Yeah, when you stack the CD unit on the Jaguar base, it kind of does look like a porcelain throne. It got the nickname the Crapper. But you know what? I always thought it looked kind of futuristic and powerful. It has this kind of weird, bulky industrial aesthetic that feels very 90s multimedia. But let's be real, the design has a more practical flaw. These things are notorious for breaking. The drives were built by Philips using common parts, and they fail. I've seen the lid mechanism on many that were broken, and believe it or not, some guy at a gaming event once punched one in frustration. True story. I've even seen people online having to use a rubber band to hold it down. Nice. But at least it didn't have the red ring of death that was so common in early Xbox 360s. So that's the hardware story, a rare, fragile, and perhaps underpowered add-on with one brilliant party trick. But a console is nothing without its games. And that's where the real surprise is, because the Jaguar CD's tiny library, surprisingly, has some absolute gems. Okay, so the hardware might be a letdown, but this is where the CD format actually delivered. We're moving from talking about chips and drives to talking about the experiences. And the upgrade was immediate. Think about it. Cartridges were limited. They couldn't hold that much, but a CD? You could now have proper full-motion video intros. You could have CD-quality soundtracks. Games could feel bigger, more cinematic. The pack-in game showed this off. You got Blue Lightning, a pretty solid arcade flight shooter, and VidGrid, a weird but fun puzzle game. You also got a demo of the PC classic Myst, and the full Tempest 2000 soundtrack on CD. This was a great starter pack. But here's what most players miss. The real value wasn't just in prettier presentation, it was in the games that finally felt complete. Case in point, take Iron Soldier 2. The cartridge version is great, but the CD version? It's packed with cinematic cutscenes between missions, setting up the story. It feels like the full, unfiltered vision the developers had. You're not just getting the game, you're getting the full package. Another prime example is Battlemorph, the sequel to Cybermorph, and is arguably one of the best games in the Jaguar's entire library. Open world flying, great objectives, and a truly epic OST. It's just fantastic, and I highly recommend it. Now, if you were hanging out in arcades in the mid-90s, you definitely saw Primal Rage. Dinosaurs and giant apes beating each other senseless. It was a killer concept. The Jaguar CD port was actually pretty solid. It's closer to the sharper Saturn version and the stripped-down ones on the Genesis or SNES. The stop-motion animation is kind of chunky and cool, the digitized sprites look great, but here's the catch they don't tell you. Pulling off the special moves in this port is an absolute nightmare. The input windows are so strict, it feels like you need prehistoric reflexes. So you get this visually impressive fighter that's awesome to watch, but pretty frustrating to actually play. It's a perfect example of a Jaguar CD game, a clear visual upgrade that's hamstrung by one glaring, controller-throwing flaw. And Highlander gets a lot of hate for its clunky tank controls. But it has full episodes of the animated series spliced right into the game. That was pretty mind-blowing for 1995. World Tour Racing is a seriously good racing game that blows the Jaguar's other racer, Checkered Flag, out of the water. But here's the problem. With only 13 official retail games ever released, the library is just too small to have made a difference. I mean, super tiny. You could play every single one in a weekend. In one of the games that I know all Jaguar owners, including myself, prayed would show up on the CD was Alien vs. Predator. Despite Atari's plans to bring this blockbuster into the new world of CD multimedia, it sadly never materialized due to financial and management problems within the company as they fought the losing battle against Sega and Sony. So, is that it? A baker's dozen titles and you're done? Not even close. This is where the story takes a modern turn. The Jaguar CD's afterlife has been way more interesting than its actual life. Because the hardware is in the public domain, a massive homebrew scene exploded. Developers have been creating and releasing brand new games for this 3-decade-old add-on for years. We're talking about finished prototypes that were never released, like Robinson's Requiem. we're talking entirely new games like Frog Feast, and there are tons of them. You can download the files, burn them to a CDR, and play them on the original hardware. This cat is a living, breathing system, and how cool is that? But let's be real about the elephant in the room. Do you actually need to hunt down a fragile, $1,000 piece of plastic to play these games today? Probably not. And here's why. Devices like the Jaguar Game Drive have changed everything. It's a cartridge you plug into the Jaguar that can load every single game, cartridge and CD, from an SD card. It completely bypasses the need for the actual CD unit. You can also play the CD ISOs via emulation, like the excellent Big Pimu emulator on the PC. The Game Drive and emulation are the smarter, cheaper, and more reliable way to experience every single game this add-on had to offer. The original hardware is a collector's trophy, a piece of history for the super dedicated, and if you're lucky enough to own one of these, then I tip my hat to you, good sir. Jealous. But here's my final takeaway. The Jaguar CD itself might have been a failure, a poorly timed, underpowered last gasp. But the games it enabled? They remain the hidden peak of the Jaguar's library. They showed what the console could have been if it had more time, more support, and started on CD from the beginning. It's a fascinating what-if story, preserved in a handful of discs. And thanks to modern solutions, you don't need to mortgage your house to experience the best parts of it. So, what do you think? Was the Jaguar CD a tragic missed opportunity, or a doomed idea from the start? And have you ever tried playing it through a game drive or emulator? Let's talk about it in the comments. Alright my friends, this is the Retro Gaming Boss signing out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.